All right. So, guys, thank you for joining us for part two of our actual tax webinar. And we have a fantastic guest. In fact, the expert at what we would consider the person that we all questionably might not have be exactly happy with, I guess, right? And
Right.
I'm sure you're pretty used to this. This happens probably every single year. But we have Miss Dinah Kilgore. Make sure I'm pronouncing it right. It is Dinah, correct?
No, it's Dinah.
Dinah, it is Dinah. So we had a bet going in our office. All right, so Dinah Kilgore, and she is the chief appraiser for the El Paso Central Appraisal District. So, Dinah, give us some base down of what that means, what it is, and what your position kind of wraps around.
Well, basically, appraisal districts are in every county in the state of Texas, and we do all the appraising for all of the taxing entities within our counties. We keep a set of maps current. We apply exemptions that people apply for. We make sure that we process those. And so we're in charge of everything except for setting a rate and collecting the taxes.
Gotcha. And that is responsibility of the taxing entities, correct?
Right. The tax, every taxing entity, whether it's city, county, school, emergency services district, water district, they all set their own rates. Here in El Paso County, we're unique because the city tax office is the consolidated tax office and does the billing and collecting for all of those taxing entities.
Correct. Now, as I understand it, prior to the establishment of central appraisal districts in Texas, it used to be that every taxing entity did their own appraisal. Is that correct?
That's correct. Usually when I go out to a new group and I talk about them, I tell them the history of why there are appraisal districts. Prior to appraisal districts, they used to call it the Pivotal Bill. And that was in 1978, 79, that the Pivotal Bill went into existence and created appraisal districts. The reason they did that in the state of Texas is not only did every county do something different, but within the county, every entity would do something different. A municipality may be at 100% of market. A school district may be at 25% of market. They had different deadlines when you had to render, when you had to file a protest. You would have to go protest at your school district. You'd have to protest at the city. You'd have to protest at the county. So it was very cumbersome, very confusing, and not equal. And so what the Pivotal Bill was create an equal form of valuation and on taxation, how to tax, because the property tax bill that went into existence not only covers the appraisal process, portion of it, it also covers the protesting portion and of course the billing and tax rate portion of it.
Gotcha. So let's talk about value for a second, because as we mentioned, when I did my research, basically it came out that there used to be 3,000 entities defining value, whereas now all the central appraisal districts take care of that. Where does value actually come from? Because is it market value as prescribed by my profession, or is it market value as prescribed by an appraiser's license? How is it defined?
Well, as we all know, those of us that are in the business, Texas is a non-disclosure state, but the tax code that is set by legislature, by our state representatives, state senators, dictates that appraisal districts must appraise as of market value. In other words, what a property would sell for. The definition of market value, the same one that realtors have to know when they take their license, same one we have to know, and not just us here in Texas, but throughout the country and throughout the world. Willing buyer, willing seller, everybody knows everything about it. Nobody's under distress. So yes, we do look at what are the properties selling for, which makes it very hard in a state where it is a non-disclosure. I deal with a lot of other states and they cannot believe that we have to set values at market, but that we don't have access to that. So we do a lot of research, a lot more than other states. There are states where when you buy a property, you have to disclose that to your assessor's office right then. That doesn't happen here. So we do have to set at a market value. Now, again, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is we do mass appraisal. So where a fee appraiser will come in when you're getting a mortgage, wanting to buy a home, you have to hire a fee appraiser to come in and set a value because you need to get a mortgage. You need to see is the bank going to lend you the money on that. So you have a fee appraiser. Well, for appraisal districts, because we have over here in El Paso County, about 422,000 parcels. it would take us an enormous amount of time. We never get finished, and the cost would be astronomical. So what the tax code allows us to do is mass appraisal. So we look at specific neighborhoods. We try to categorize the different types of properties. We run ratios. We run the market for those areas. We do what we call a bell curve. Always like our mathematicians, get out the outliers, you know, the ones that are too high or too low, and look at the median. Look at what the median sale price. We don't sales chase. We're not allowed to do that, and we are supposed to look at foreclosures now. Legislation went in a couple of sessions ago that says we have to include that in our calculations, which we do. So I'm not sure, Brian, if that answers what you were asking.
No, that's actually a really good response to it. And I like the fact that you were kind of the fact of bringing up the fact that it is a non-disclosure state, because actually in our sister state in New Mexico, they actually do request at the time of closing to report that sale to the taxing district there. So in our scenario, we do have some protection from the disclosure of market value as prescribed. Now, just so everybody's aware, it's as of January 1st that your value is defined, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess the next question comes down to, there is also some exemptions that fall into play defining value for each taxing entity, correct?
Right. And we always tell everybody, check your notices. You know, there are responsibilities of a property owner. Are you entitled to an exemption? Everybody who owns a home and it's their principal residence is entitled to a homestead exemption in the state of Texas. And there are different amounts for different taxing entities.
That also can change between school districts as well, especially in our particular area.
Right.
Isleta offers an additional exemption as well.
Exactly. The Isleta, by state law, every school district is supposed to give you a certain amount of exemption. But Isleta then gives you an additional 20%. So they're allowed to do that. The school district's allowed to do that. But by law, they have to give you, I think it's at $25,000 right now, exemption. $25,000, yes. From the market value, not from the dollars you pay, but from the market value of your property. Now, the other entities like your city and your county, they have an option to vote in an exemption. And here in El Paso County, the county of El Paso and the city of El Paso gives you $5,000 off of your market value. They give you that exemption. Over 65 is a little bit different. Again, for schools, it is required, but for other entities like cities or counties, it is a local option that they can pick that up. The only other thing that is required by all entities is a veterans exemption. And that's based on two things. One of the exemptions is based on your percent of disability. What is your percent of disability that the government, the VA, has given you? Or if you're 100% service-related unemployable, you can qualify for a 100%, you pay no taxes whatsoever to any taxing entity, whether it's a community college, the hospital, your school, your city, your county. That's the only exemption that applies for the hospitals.
Gotcha. So a couple questions to that. So how can a person check on their exemptions? Where can they find out what exemptions have been put in play? And then if that is the scenario that they've just filed a homestead exemption, how can they confirm that that has been applied?
There's a couple of different ways. One of the things you can do is look at your notice. On your notice, if you look at your notice kind of in the middle, it's going to show you a value, and it'll show you tax rates. And then it'll show you a different value, and that's going to be a lower amount because you have your exemptions. Right above it, it may have an HS for homestead. It may have an OV 65 for over 65. It may have a VA, so there's a veteran. So you know you're getting your exemptions. You can also go to our website, epcad.org, and you can
That's
go.
Sitting right up here above us.
Oh, yes. Good. Yeah, there you go. And you go to the top of the website over to the right, and it says property search. You can click on that. You can put in your address, your name, your legal, your property identification number, whatever you have, and it'll pop up, and you can check for your exemptions there. If you don't have a computer access and you can't understand your notice, give us a call and we'll walk you through it. If it's brand new, it takes us a couple of days to get it on the website. Normally, every week we update the website with everything we've worked on during the week. But during the protest season, we'll try to update it every night so that you can see that. So give us a couple of days and then you can check your website. Again, when you're totally in doubt, you've checked everything, and you're still not sure, give us a call. Call us up. We'll look it up for you.
So in the homestead exemption, there's another big caliber, especially in the current environment. So the average that we've heard publicly is about 13% across the taxing value of El Paso that it has had an increase. But there is a definition that if you have a homestead exemption for the previous year, that you have locked in a maximum increase of 10%.
10%, right.
Can you kind of express what that means?
Yeah, legislature several years ago, remember when we had homes were going crazy back then and people were being priced out of their homes tax-wise. Well, legislature saw that and they came up with what they call a homestead cap. And what that cap does is a 10% cap. So say you have a value of $100,000 on your home. And this year with the reappraisal, it goes up to $150,000. Last year you paid on taxes on $100,000. This year you're going to pay on $110,000, not $150,000, because it can only go up by 10% what you pay. The market will continue to go up as the sales go up, or it could come down. But what you're going to pay on is going to be that 10% difference.
So using a statement, just so everybody understands, your market value will show one number, whilst your next value of taxable value, for instance, with your homestead exemption, will show another number, which will be that 10%.
Right. And if you look way over to the left, it'll say homestead cap, and you can see that amount. Now, it's only on your homestead. If you have rental property, you're not going to get it. You get it on one property, and it's your principal residence. If you own rental or you own a business, you don't receive that cap. Now, in legislation going on right now, excuse me?
This was a question that was just brought up based on that conversation. So a person has moved out of their primary residence and maybe wants to move it to another one or moved out of state. How do they remove that homestead exemption so they don't get what is called, and correct me if I'm wrong, but basically where they can roll back onto taxes that you should have owed?
Right. If you left your homestead on there and you knew you left it on there and we find it, we have to go back. But what you can do is if you've moved to another home here, you just contact us. Now, remember, January 1 is the date. So if you're moving right now, it's going to be in effect for next year, for 2022. But as say by January of 2021, you had moved in November, December, then we will take what you had at your other home and move it over to your new home. If you're moving out of state, you contact us and there's a form that you fill out. We sign it and we send it or we give it to you, and you take it to the appraisal district. If it's in the state of Texas, to the appraisal district in that county that you move to. And where that's important is if you're over 65, your tax rate for your school is frozen at the rate that you had when you first applied for your over 65. Now it can go down below
tax rate, not your market value.
Right, we're talking about a tax rate. The taxes that you pay, no matter how high the market, if it goes down, you can go down, but you can't go higher. So what that allows you to do, say you have a home here and you're selling it to move closer to your children in Lubbock. Well, then you can do what they call a tax transferal, and you can transfer that exemption to Lubbock, so you don't have to start over again on that freeze if you're over 65 or disabled. Now, if it's a regular homestead, there's no freeze, but you can still move that homestead, remove it from one, take it to the other, but you need to notify us. Give us a call, send us a letter saying what you did, and we'll do that. But remember now, anything done right now, we're not going to have those name changes or those title transaction until after the notice, because we've already sent out notices. So after the protest season, then we'll start making those name changes and those address changes, and you can do it at that time. So I'd say August or September.
Now, homestead filing for exemption has been pushed out to, as I understand it, through COVID delay till April. Is that correct? They can file their homestead exemption?
Last year, we took it upon ourselves to push it out, but this year the deadline is still April 30th. But here's one thing with your homestead. Any of your exemptions, homestead, over 65, your veterans, you can go back 2 years. If you did not know about this, you're new and you've been here, you moved in 2019. If you come in and apply now before it becomes delinquent after 2 years, then you can get the current year and 2 years back. But once they go delinquent, after 2 years, we can't go back. But you can go back for those 2 years. So we can go back and grant you that. And if you've already paid your taxes, which you probably have because your mortgage company's paid them, then you get a refund. So,
awesome.
try that. Just because, yeah. I think that's a good thing for people to know because they think, oh, I missed it last year. I didn't get it in 2020. I moved in 2019. I didn't know. So I'll get it for now. But if you'll let us know, when you file your application, then you say, well, we'll give it to you for 2020 and 2021. So that's one good thing for folks to know is we can go back and apply it for a current year plus 2 years.
Now, if their person is fighting their property taxes this year, they have the ability to file for a protest either 30 days after receiving the notice or May 17th, whichever is later. Is that correct?
Right, whichever is the later date. So if you're just now getting a notice, you've got 30 days from that notice, which is going to take you towards the end of May. If you got your notice last month when we sent out most of them, then May 17th is your deadline. It's normally May 15th, but because it falls on a weekend, then it goes to the following Monday. So May 17th for this year is the date. And I always tell everybody, and you guys can tell your clients, go ahead and file that protest. Maybe you're not sure. Maybe you've got to do some research. Don't let that deadline pass you by, because then if you miss that deadline, you've got to file what they call a late protest. It has to go before the chairman of the appraisal review board, who they are not employees of the appraisal district, appointed by the local judge to hear the two different sides, just like a quasi-judicial jury. But you have to prove to that chairman why you filed late. You have to prove that there was a reason beyond your control. So I always tell everybody, go ahead and file, then do your research. Look at your sales. Be real careful on the research, though, remembering that we do mass appraisal. So we're going to look at what the median is in that neighborhood. But you may have information we don't have, and we need that information. We don't have access to MLS. Most appraisal districts in the state do not have access to MLS. So we need you to come in and tell us. If you just bought a property, we're going to look at it. Now, that being said, Brian, if you don't mind, I'm going to expand on this a little bit.
Yes, of course.
If you bought a property and it was one of those types of properties that needed a lot of repairs, or you just got a really good deal, you bought it from a family member, we're going to look at that sale and make sure it's what they call a true arm's length transaction, because we have to look at the definition of market value when we go to set it. So just because maybe you got a great deal because you bought it from your ex-brother-in-law doesn't mean you might get that value. We've got to look at it, but we do need you to bring it in so we can.
Excellent. So I have a few questions that were brought to us about the conversation of how your board is defined. So your position is a hired position, but your board is an appointed position. Can you kind of walk us through who
Sure.
appoints those board members and where they come from? Because this is where you make that determination through your taxing entities and your elected officials define your board. So if you can give us kind of a breakdown.
Well, and we have two different boards. We have our board of directors and we have our appraisal review board. So I'm going to talk about the board of directors first, if that's okay, Brian. And
Absolutely.
so the board of directors, the appointment of the board of directors is set by tax code. Everything the appraisal district does is set by tax code. We don't make this stuff up and we don't come up with our own way of doing it. It's very spelled out. So for El Paso County and the majority of your large appraisal districts, what we call metros, goes the same way. We have what we call a 3/4 rule, and that gives us 9 board members. So every part of the county has a representative on our board. The lower valley, the upper valley, the central, every part of our county has a representative. And those representatives by our bylaws and by the law are appointed by the taxing entities. Example, our bylaws state that the city of El Paso appoints 2 board members. The county of El Paso appoints 1. El Paso ISD appoints 2. Isleta appoints 1. All of your lower valley entities get 2. They get together on the lower valley entities. And what I mean by lower valley entities, you guys probably know, Town of Horizon, City of Socorro, Socorro ISD, Clint ISD, Fabens ISD, Tornillo ISD, all of those entities, Town of Clint, Town of San Eli, they can nominate up to 2 people, and then the one that gets the most nominations, those 2 get appointed to our board. Upper Valley has 1 appointee on our board of directors. That way, the entire county is represented on our board of directors. Board of directors of appraisal district are not allowed by law to get involved in the appraisal process. Their function is to hire the chief appraiser, hire a taxpayer liaison officer, to approve the budget, to approve our reappraisal plan, which is a biannual reappraisal plan. And that's it. They used to approve the appraisal review board members, and they used to appoint the chairman and the secretary of the appraisal review board. That's been pulled totally away from the appraisal district function, and those folks are interviewed and chosen by the local administrative judge, and that's throughout all the metros, and the local administrative judge by tax law appoints the chairman and the secretary. Those guys are the ones that sit and listen to the protests between the property owner and the appraisal district. Hopefully, after we've had an informal, majority of our cases, if you'll come in and visit with an appraiser, we can get those taken care of on a very informal basis. And at that time, that information can be held confidential. But if you go to the appraisal review board, it's an open meeting, open records, and that information is not confidential.
And it's actually even recorded now as well.
Yes. Not only, we've always recorded it audio, but now we're also recording it video.
Excellent. So a couple quick questions that came up. So basically the question was, can you explain the protest process and how to prepare?
Yes.
You kind of hit a couple of those questions, but also I want to kind of bring up the fact that the Central Appraisal District must also give you the evidence that they're using within 14
Right.
days of your appraisal. So can you kind of break that down a little bit for us?
Yes, we can. Up until the time you file a protest, we're not allowed by law to give you any sales information that we have or that we use. Once a protest is filed and you request that information, then we have 14 days to give you the comparables that we're going to be using or what we use to set your property. Even if you did not ask it, when you come into your hearing, we're going to show you. We're going to pull up the sales that we utilize. We're going to pull up what we use to make sure you're equal within your neighborhood. We do an equity grid or an equity, like a CMA for market. We also do an equity. And so we'll give you that information at the time of the hearing. You walk through, then we can definitely do it on an informal basis, see what you bring in, or on a formal basis, or you can ask for it in advance. You cannot ask for anything that you did not file a protest for. You cannot protest for a client unless that client, you have written permission from that client that says they're going to let you protest for them. We're very strict about that. Reason being is you've got parents that maybe you've got a son and daughter who are in conflict, and the son comes in and says, I'm going to represent my parents. And a day later, the daughter comes in and says, I'm going to represent my parents. And then, so no, you have to have written permission from the owner to be able to come in. And even if they are your client, we need to know you have permission, whether it's informally or formally. We do have a lot of this information when we send you the protest or the notice. When we send you the notice of appraised value, there's a lot of information in there. When we send you your appointment letter, there's even more information in there. On our website, there's a lot of information. We have tutorials. You can go in and you can look at.
We had a guest post.
Also. Yeah. We have a lot of information.
Video.
Yes, please use our website. Now, what we ask people to bring in is bring us in market information. We walk around all the time and pick flyers up. We talk to all different types of people, mortgage companies, financial companies, but we make mistakes. And we're human and we don't always have all the data. So if you recently purchased a home, bring in your closing statement, bring in your appraisal, because there's comparables in that appraisal that was done that we can look at and see. If you haven't just bought a home, it's a home you've had a long time, then see what's happening in your neighborhood. A lot of times you see homes being sold by maybe a specific realtor. Brian Bird's Realty, has a lot of them. call them and ask them, do you charge for a CMA? You know, could I get something? Can you give me something? It doesn't hurt to call. But a lot of times if you'll come in and we show you what we have, it's a lot of what you're going to find. If you've got damage, now, if you've got just the standard wear and tear, that's not going to make a difference in the selling, especially now. But if you've got flooding that happened and you haven't repaired sheetrock, you have foundation issues with cracks and it's cracking your walls, things that have
roofing issues.
Right, exactly. Things that would have to be done to be able to get that top dollar in the market. Bring that in, bring us in estimates. It's pretty easy now with the website, with Google and all that stuff that's out there. You can get in and get estimates of what it might cost you to go in and upgrade. Maybe you're in a neighborhood where everything is refrigerated air and you're wanting to sell it. So, you know, we need to know these different things. But you as a homeowner or a property owner, maybe it's a rental, bring us in the damage. Remember, January 1 though, January 1, if you had damage last summer because of the rains, say for an example, and you fixed it by January 1, well, you no longer have that damage. So we can't take that into consideration. Does that answer? Does that help?
It does. It does. It's a great information. So I have a question. This is a question that was brought up about the current state of IDs, so driver's license. So finally, in your homestead exemption, we have people that have not been able to file an exemption because they get a 3 or 4 month delay on being able to get a driver's license. How would they participate and how would they work through that process?
It's really difficult because the state has kind of tied our hands. Everything's got to match. Mm-hmm. Your address on your driver's license has to match, has to be a current driver's license. You know, everything has to match. What we tell people, because we can go back 2 years and grant it, is just hold off till you get it. Because we can go back, even if we get to a deadline, if it's for that year, you still have got 2 years to be able to do it. So we can do that. You can wait. If you're at the point where you no longer can wait, if you'll come in and bring us in maybe a utility bill, your paper driver's license where you've got the paper one, or I think now what they do is they cut out something and they give you your old one back and you've got a paper receipt for the other one. We've just got to see that your face and your address on that ID is the same as we have. The name is the same. And that's
I have an intriguing one. So my property has 2 lots. The legal description is identified as 5211. My driver's license and mailing address is labeled as 5207. So this has actually been a dilemma, and I've been trying to figure out how do I get TxDOT or the entity to change it. They won't change it, and you guys won't change it. So I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So I'm going to definitely get with you on a side note, because that is something that does come into play.
Well, and on cases like that, I will tell you this. My staff will call me, or we have a director of litigation, deeds, and exemptions, and we do have exceptions to the rule on things like that, that we can say, okay, great. Now, we don't set addresses. We go by whatever address, roads and bridges, county, whatever address they give us is what we have to utilize. So we cannot change that address. But what we can do for our records is we can combine your location address to have both addresses. Mm-hmm. So awesome. Call me. Okay. I'll be happy to make sure that we get somebody to help you with that. But we can do a combination of addresses. So no matter what address is on your ID, it's on our records. It won't be official with the county, but it'll be on our property records as a location address.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of put this out here. First off, you came on of free will. We didn't force you, twist your arm, or anything like that.
Yes, you did.
The Central Appraisal District is there to simply hold the accountability of the market value. They're not the evil tax entity, right? The tax entity are the elected officials. Those are the people that are actually setting the tax rate. And the city and other entities in town have talked about maybe putting caps on what they will increase based on tax rate. So that is called a tax rollback. But that does not have anything to do with the Central Appraisal District. And this is a conversation that I've had a lot lately, is making people understand if you could go out and sell that property for that amount, that number is correct. It's the question is, if you could not do that, then you probably do need to be to protest. But as you mentioned, protest anyways, just to know what they're using
Yes.
to identify that value, right?
Yes.
It's holding everybody accountable. And I think that you've always kind of expressed the fact that, listen, we're here as a function of a bigger cause. And that
Yes.
is that fact that, I had a conversation, and a lot of the other central appraisal districts. So our tax value in El Paso is currently at, this number fairly, probably, I assume, well, what is that tax value total?
The tax
Do you have
value,
an idea or rough estimate?
well, roughly it's about $2.89 for about 5 different taxing entities when you add it up. A year ago, when we were looking at numbers, if you were to look at, say, the city, I think the city's now at 82 cents or something. If you look at the city of Austin, it was like 45 cents. I mean, we're about double. But here's the issue.
This is what I wanted to get at.
Yeah, and county also we're about double what, say, Travis County is. But our overall value after exemptions that we certify on our roll and turn over is about 46 billion compared to about 446 billion. And the last time I looked at Travis, I know it's over 450 billion right now. So they have a lot more, and they have a lot more commercial values. Here in El Paso County, about the last numbers we took, about 55% of the overall appraisal roll is residential. And if you look at, I did a presentation for the city, and I think you can go online and see that. If not, I have it, I can send it. But if you look at that, the parcel count, how many parcels we have or how many pieces of property we have residentially far exceeds, and same with the total value. So unfortunately, residential is what single family homes is what generates value here in El Paso County. And you're exactly right on the tax rates. In the tax code, it has language in there. It's not called the no new tax. It's no new revenue. So they have some new names for it, but it's the same thing. And what they're supposed to do is look at when we send over on July 25th, the appraisal value, the appraisal roll, and then they're supposed to look at what rate would generate the same amount of revenue as the year before, and then add in any new construction or any new value. And if that rate needs to come down to generate the same revenue. So they have their own calculations that they have to go by. But of course, taxing entities have to look at not just their expenses, but what does the public want from them? Do they want more parks or more trails, or what is it they're wanting? So there's a lot that they have to take into consideration.
And I think that's a lot of times what happens. And I know we're getting close to our end, but I want to make sure that everybody does understand that this is a little bit of a history base. But yes, the tax value in Travis County alone, between the University of Texas, the river, and Mopac and I-35, there is more tax value there than there is in the entire county of El Paso.
Right.
And that is telling you that Travis County and El Paso County are about the same population. So therefore, we're dealing with the same police, medical, all the faculties that are required, but we have a much lower amount of revenue generated from taxes. So guys, there's two sides of the coin here.
Right. And you're exactly right, Brian. Not only that, but the parcel count in Travis is pretty equal to ours here in El Paso County. We're about 20,000 different is all, which is a very small amount. So we are very similar, but it's just the makeup of the types of homes and businesses that are there that generates so much more. You're exactly right. But again, they're under the same restrictions we are and the same tax code because it's for the entire state of Texas. And in our appraisal process, it's not just us, it's throughout the entire United States. We all have to go by the same process. We have to look at the same approaches to value. It's just the ratios that may be different.
Excellent. Well, Dinah, I appreciate that. I mean, there's tons of information. Obviously, we could go on for time and time again, but I mean, I think what it comes down to is people just needing to do their research, check in. If they did not receive the notice, this is the last question I'll ask. If they didn't receive their notice, they can go online and claim and still file their protest online, correct?
Yes. If you don't, now this year, everybody's getting a notice, whether your value went up, down, or stayed the same.
What I mean is if they didn't receive the physical copy,
Right. If you don't receive receive a notice, you can go. You can file a protest anyway. Just file it by the 17th of May. You can always file a notice. Just make sure you do the deadline. You can get online. You can go under property search, look at your property, see what it is, file a protest. If you got a notice but don't remember what you did with it, you can still fill out a protest. If you didn't get a notice, let us know. We'll send you one, but you can still fill out a protest. So we're here. Everybody called bad cat. We're horrible. We raise values. Unfortunately, state of Texas does not look at our income in allowing us to set a value. So unfortunately, for those that have been out of work or haven't received that income, we cannot take that into consideration. We want to help you. We want to walk through the process. We want you to work with us. We're here to not only help the taxing entities, but to help the citizen. None of us like paying taxes. We know we have to. We just want to make sure we understand the process and that we're being treated fairly. And that's what we're here for.
Fair and equal. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Fair and equal. And I appreciate it. Yes, I believe that's true, and especially on the Central Appraisal District side, because they're just simply tasked with something to do. Right? You have to come up with the value, and we have to define it, because Texas is a property tax state. We don't have an income tax to accommodate. So we have to make sure that that's responsible.
Right.
As I mentioned, just above me, I have elpasocad.org. That is the Central Appraisal District's website. You can go on there and get all this information. You can contact and go through those details. You are welcome to go through and post any additional comments. We will be supervising this over the next couple of days to try and get answers. If we have more questions, we'll reach out. We had, so right now we're sitting at about 140 people watching this online. So obviously it is very top of mind. Yeah, top of mind authority right now. And I think that just kind of shows that how important it is, and how people just don't know what they don't know, and they sometimes just need to open that knowledge base. So thank you so much for joining us and giving us some of that knowledge. And like I said, you come by very high recommendation. Everybody that has ever spoken about you says great things, and that you're honest and sincere in a lot of things that you do. But remember, guys, it is a taxing process, and you should always hold your governments to top of mind authority, and hold not only the valuation model, which is the Central Appraisal District, but your taxing entities, which are all the places that actually charge the value by the tax rate. So just remember, there's two parts of this equation. Your election day is what supervises one, that puts into effect the other. So just remember,
Brian,
always,
If I may remind everybody, the taxing entities, all your different taxing entities out there, will start having their rate hearings. It may be all Zoom this year. It was last year. But as a property owner, taxpayer, you have the right to be part of that hearing and have your voice heard. So the more our voices are heard, the more things, potentially can get done. I know legislation is looking at some additional exemptions. They're looking at lowering that cap from the 10% homestead cap to a 5%. So there's a lot of stuff going on out there. So let your voices be known. Talk to your representatives and see what can be done. Brian, you're exactly right. We're basically we're processors. We process what the tax code says we have to process. We don't set legislation. We don't lobby. We process what's there, and we want to help people understand that process.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And just so everybody understands, remember, there are pieces of this pie. There was a question that came out that asked, can real estate agents help you with that valuation? And the answer is absolutely. They can help you out with valuation and giving you some comparables and showing you what the market looks like. So reach out to your real estate professional, ask for that assistance. You can also file with tax property consultants as well that can protest for you on your behalf if you have that writing or that document that shows that they can do that in writing. So thank you so much. And as mentioned, so there was a question, and I'll leave it at this last one. There was a question, do I use comps April 2021 or do they need to stop as of January 21? How far back should they go?
Well, the best way is 6 months. So it would be from, say, the middle of 2020 to
so
January
June
1, 2021. But we will go back as depending on where it's at. If it's in the county, and sales are not around, we can go back, 2 years. If
Okay.
it's a really active market, we're going to want to stay as close as we can to January 1. We'll look at the months after January 1 to see if that trend is still happening. But we'll take the whole year of 2020 and look at it. We're not going to just take 1 or 2 months and say, oh, out of 12 months in 2020, 2 months were really high and 10 months were low, so we're going to take the high months. No, we're going to look at a whole year's worth. But for you coming in, when you file a protest, you're going to want to bring the ones as close as you can to January 1. But you can go back a whole year. You can go back 3 months, 6 months. You can even look at January and February and throw that into your CMA. We do take that. I hope that answered the question. I think it did.
I think it did, absolutely. And so much, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. I know I'm keeping you after hours, and I truly appreciate it. Tell your IT department thank you so much too. I know we ran into a little bit of a headache. That's why we were about a minute or so late, but thank you so much for joining us. And remember, they are paid for by your taxing dollar, so therefore you need to ask those questions. You can go in there. You can. They are on Trowbridge, and I have a beautiful building that you can stop in and have a conversation. Talk to those informal hearings. Informal hearings, I've actually done a lot of these in the past, and they actually worked out really well. The appraisers are willing to have conversations, and that's the real key here. They're not out just to win. They're out to help and communicate and explain. So thank you so much. Go ahead.
One thing this year, since you mentioned that, is you've got to have a protest filed and an appointment date set to be able to come in informally, because we're trying to limit the number of people in the building still. But we are having informals. But once you get that appointment date, you can come in any time before that formal date. You can come in and talk to an appraiser, but file that protest so that you do get that letter, and then you can come in. And Brian, you're right. We love working appraiser to property owner one-on-one. It's so much easier, and we can sure get a lot more done.
I have one last, and this will be, I promise, the last.
It's okay. We're open until 6.
All right. The question of virtual. Because if a person lives out of town, that virtual, can they do it in a virtual environment?
We have phone in. What's allowed by the tax code is when you file your protest, request a phone hearing. Now that phone hearing is going to be formal. It's not going to be informal, it will be formal. But request a phone hearing, and then you'll get your appointment date. And then we'll contact you at the day and time that your phone hearing will be. That's with a formal. We are working with a group of folks to try to do virtual. Right now, we're just doing it with the tax agents. They're kind of our pilot program to see how it plays out. It's not allowed really by tax law right now, but it looks like there is some legislation out there, some bills to allow that. But what is allowed is a phone hearing. Now, we do have on our website, if you just want general information, you can get on our website, you can put in your information, and somebody will call you, an appraiser will call you and talk to you with general information. So you can do that, and you can be out of town to do that. We will call you, even if it's a long distance number, we will call you, and we don't reverse charges, so you won't get charged. We'll take that.
So one of the people asked if there is a place that they can have a vetting service for the tax property consultant, somebody doing this service. Is this a licensed profession, or is this just kind of a person? Is there any licensing required?
If for a tax consultant, there is a license required, and if a property owner wants to use them, there is a fee. They do charge you for that. It's just like a realtor. The tax consultants have to be licensed, just like we have to be licensed, and they're listed. I used to say they're listed in the phone book, but you can Google, and there's several different firms out there, individuals and firms that will do what you can do yourself if you have the time. They do the same thing you do, so we can do it without a fee, but they are out there. If you, as a realtor, want to do that, you would have to be licensed with TDLR as a property tax consultant. Now, if you have a client who's given you permission in writing to do this for them, but you cannot charge them for it. So there's a difference.
So if they're receiving compensation, they must be
Yes.
licensed, whereas if they're
Yes.
not, they do not have to be licensed.
Correct.
Okay, that's
Correct.
very good information.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, thank
right.
you so much for this. We truly appreciate it. And if I do get any additional follow-up questions, I will reach out to you directly. Thank you so much. And
Thanks.
for everybody online, thank you for joining. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate. We will follow this with our third round, where we will actually have a few of those tax consultants come online and kind of answer the question from the other side of the coin. This was from the Central Appraisal District side, and then we'll have it from now the tax property consultant.
The free side.
Fair enough. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a fantastic rest of your evening.
You
for
too.
Everybody else out there, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, everybody. My first blog.
Thank you.